Hello there, my name is Jordan Leroy Hansen, also known as Ledev, and I'm here for a two-part video. One is the deck tech, and one is the gameplay of a very silly brew that I've been tinkering with and been actually having a lot of fun with over the past week. And that is what I like to call reflecting gates, which is my own janky variation of the four-color gate that's been kind of going around. Now, I think before we get to what's the main component of the deck, we kind of have to see the land base, because the land base will kind of, for people who are not familiar with the gate gimmick, will probably be a little confused. Because we are playing a lot of gates. We're playing Simic Guild gates, we're playing Gruul Guild gates, we're playing Azorius Guild gates. We are just playing about half of our land base is gates. Now, gates in a general are mostly in Magic, is kind of a draft land kind of scenario. But what they are is they are lands that enter the battlefield tapped, and they're considered a gate, but they can tap for a mana of the specific guild color. Like, for example, Simic will tap for Simic colors, Izzet will tap for Izzet colors, vice versa, etc., etc. We also have a special gate in here called Gateway Plaza, which enters the battlefield tap, and you have to pay a mana, but you can add one mana of any color, which is pretty nifty. Now, there are some cards that actually will synergize with gates, which we will get to. One of them, though, being Plaza of Harmony. Plaza of Harmony, when it enters the battlefield, if you control 2 or more gates, you gain 3 life. You can add 4 generic mana, but you can also add 1 mana of any type of a gate you control could produce. So let's say we have an Izzet and, say, a Azorius Guild gate out. So then now we can tap for any of the Jeskai colors, white, blue, or red, which is pretty nifty. Now, some people are also noticing the fast lands in here, such as the Stomping Grounds, the Steam Vents, and even the Plaza of Harmonies technically are fast mana, and even the Breeding Pools. These are lands that we want to enter in fast, but the only reason why they are in here, honestly, it's just to help us with our tempo, because these lands are relatively slow lands. We have ways to compensate for the tempo, but there are some times where we do need to play a spell right on turn 3, or right on turn 4, or 5, etc., etc. And the fast lands, in general, are just designed to do that. Now, how does the deck work? Glad you asked. Anyway, first of all, we're going to talk about the cards in the deck. First off is Banefire. Banefire is mostly in here because this is a ramp deck of sorts, and honestly, this is just a really good burn spell against control-style decks if we need a finisher. And just trust me when I say this, we are going to ramp to a lot of mana, so Banefire is kind of a no-brainer in this deck. Next up, Shimmer of Possibilities. Shimmer of Possibilities is just in there as a way to dig our tech cards for a specific matchup, but also just cards to help us benefit our curve or ramp or tempo, or even get one of our victory conditions. So it's just a sorcery speed impulse, but sometimes an impulse is what you need in silly matchups and such. Next up, the card that pretty much makes this deck work, which is Growth Spile. Growth Spile, draw a card, you may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield. So, this is essentially a Simic variation of the card Explore. This card is just really good because, like I mentioned before, one of the main cons of gates in general is the fact that they enter in tap. However, if we, say, have like 2 tap lands into the battlefield tap, then the tempo kind of negates itself. And Growth Spire just does just that. Like the fact that you can just play a gate on turn 1, and then we play one of our fast lands to just Growth Spile to play another gate, that just gives us not only good ramp, but also gives us good fixing, which is very useful in this deck. Now, a little tech card that I've actually really adored in the deck that actually works a lot more than you think at first glance, Blood Sun. Blood Sun is kind of one of the key surprise cards of me doing my little experimentation with the deck design. Now, Blood Sun is a 2 and a red for an enchantment that when it enters the battlefield, you draw a card. All lands lose all abilities except mana abilities. Now, you think at first glance that this is mostly just a weird tech card to help us combat against the weird, dare we say, kind of the, as I like to put it, kind of the annoying lands that are in the meta that might harm our decks, such as Field of Ruin, or even like the Surge for Azcanta flip, or even the Orzhov one that exiles creatures, and then you could play those creatures tap. Like, there's a lot of rival Ixalan lands that this does negate. Probably the more popular one being the Search for Azcanta and the Hadana's Climb in the Field of Ruin. Now, that at first glance seems kind of like a no-brainer. However, there's another secret to why this card is really, really good for our deck. Now, one thing that people kind of don't get right off the bat when they play the game of Magic or starting out, enter the battlefield effects are considered abilities. So, remember how I mentioned before that our lands enter the battlefield tap? The fact that they enter in the battlefield tap is considered an ability. So, essentially, when Blood Sun is out on the battlefield, this will not enter the battlefield tap. It will enter the battlefield untap, making what was originally slow mana into actually fast mana, which is really, really good. It also synergizes with like fast lands, such as Arcane lands, because they enter the battlefield untapped without having to lose life, which is really, really, really good. Blood Sun is just one of those cards that I am debating putting in as a 2-of once I get the rare wild card to craft it. It's just one of those cards that, at first glance, you're like, okay, it's just a tech card, but really, it synergizes ridiculously well with this deck. Kind of absurdly well, if I'm being quite frank. So, yeah. Now, the one Nambo it does affect is Plaza of Harmony, which is, yeah, the factor is that when it enters the battlefield, you don't get the free life anymore, but you still get the mana abilities. So, you might consider it costly, especially if you're local meta, or, like, say, your, like, arena meta that you're trying to compete in is very, very aggressive base. Maybe the free life is essential for you to survive, so you might want to have a sideboard option to sideboard these out. It's just what I'm saying. But then there's just the other pro of the fact that Gateway Plaza, it synergizes stupidly well with Gateway Plaza. I mean, the fact that it enters in untapped, and you don't have to pay the 1 mana, which gives you fast, any color mana, which is really, really good. I mean, if somebody is trying to make a 5-color gate deck a thing, I think they gotta keep an eye on this combo alone with Blood Sun. Just that factor alone, I think, might make 5-color decks. Well, there's not a popular one at the moment. If someone is trying to make 5-color decks a thing, I would point their fingers at looking at Blood Sun along with the Gateway Plaza combo, because if it's going to be a thing, that's going to make it a thing. Now, for us, we're just a 4-color deck, so let's get on. I kind of nerded enough about this card, but the card's just really, really good. Next up, Knight of Autumn. Another great addition to our deck, which is pretty much a Dryad Knight 2-1, that when it enters the battlefield, you have the choice of either putting 2 1/1 counters on Knight of Autumn, destroying a target artifact or enchantment, or you gain 4 life. Very versatile card, probably one of the more popular cards now seen play within the Ravnica with this current set of standard. Just the versatility of this card alone to help us destroy annoying enchantments like Ixalan's Binding, or maybe another annoying enchantments that are either affecting us and such. Or if there's a circumstances where we need to destroy our own Blood Sun, hey, we can do that. But the fact that we can gain 4 life helps us against burn, and even just making this into a 4-free, it's just fine enough. Another card that's in here is Deafening Clarion. That's another multicolored card. It has the ability to deal, we can either choose one or both, to either deal free damage to each creature, or creatures you control gain lifelink until end of turn. Now, one thing you're going to see later when we talk about in this deck, our creatures are going to be relatively, with the exceptions of Knight of Autumn, are going to be very big creatures. So, they can actually be protected against this Deafening Clarion board wipe, which is very beneficial, because then we can destroy early game shenanigans that are might causing us troubles, but it also allows us to, with our big creatures, give them lifelink, which could give us a significant life gain boost against some very aggro-based or aggressive-based decks. Now, another core card for the Gate deck is the Guild Summit. Guild Summit is 2 and a blue for an enchantment that when it enters the battlefield, you may tap any number of untapped gates you control, draw a card for each gate tapped this way, and whenever a gate enters the battlefield under your control, you draw a card. This is kind of our Chemister's insight for the deck. This is our card draw engine. And for a deck that's comprised mostly of gates, this is a very powerful card draw ability. I mean, there are literally decks that are running 4 of this because the card draw aspects of this with the mini gates that we're going to play along with Growth Spile and another card we're going to get to. Just the fact that we can use this as a multi-card draw engine is really, really good. It's kind of not much to say there. One thing, if people ask, you don't have to worry. No, Blood Sun will not negate the card draw effect, since when lands still enter the battlefield, they are still considered the land types. It ain't like a Blood Moon where it's going to change it straight into a mountain, so it's still considered a gate, so you will still get the card draw from Guild Summit. Another core component of the Gates decks that's been going around that's been a great addition, and the reason why you want to see people playing 4 colors, primarily is because Gates Ablaze. Gates Ablaze is 2 and a red, and it deals X damage to each creature where X is the number of gates you control. So this is a board wipe that can be very good early game, but it also can be really, really powerful late game as well. Because the factor is, we're playing a lot of gates, so maybe we have 2 to 3 gates out early, it just becomes a Deafening Clarion, which is just fine. But in the late game, if the board presence is very problematic, like your Carnage Tyrants and such, if we have at least around 6 to 7 gates, then this just becomes a Star of Extinction that doesn't destroy land, but still wipes a very, very problematic board. Just the fact that this can both, depending on how many gates you have out, become a very early game to also late game board wipe is very powerful for our deck. It's the reason why we have it as a 4 of in the deck. Next up, another card that's powerful for the deck that I'm almost debating. I'm taking it as a 2 of at the moment to test Blood Sun out, which was kind of a fun test. But I would say it's probably good as a 3 or 4 of in some decks, is Gatebreaker Ram. Gatebreaker Ram is kind of as the weirdest analogy that a friend of mine by the name of Evan kind of pointed out, and I have to agree with him. This is our Termaggoyf of the deck. This is our card that is going to be both powerful early game, but also gets ridiculously powerful late game. It's 2 and a green for a 2/2 sheep, that pretty much gets +1/+1 for each gate you control. But as long as you control 2 or more gates, it has Vigilance and Trample. So as long as we have 2 gates out, which, by the way, we're a gate deck, so that's going to be a thing, this will be, by the time we usually play it, is going to be a 4/4 with Trample and Vigilance, which is very beneficial in the meta. I mean, I cannot stress this enough. The problem with aggro decks in general is when they go against some control matchups is cards like Seal Away, which, you know, you attack with your creature, they seal away it, oh boy, I lost my creature, yeah. But thanks to Gatebreaker Ram, with the Vigilance clause on it, it can't be targeted by Seal Away. The only thing that can kill this is like a very specific targeted removal spell, or stuff like Ixalan's Binding and such. And the fact that this card is good early game, but also ridiculously gets bigger later game, like this can sometimes become a 14/14. Yeah, the more I think about it, the more the fact that this is the Termaggoyf for gate decks is actually just a really good descriptor. I'm almost debating putting 4 of them in the deck because it's just that good. It's a really good card. Next up, Circuitous Roots. This is basically our explosive vegetation for the deck, and it's a really good explosive vegetation for gate decks in general. It's a sorcery spell for 3 and a green to search your library for up to 2 basic land cards and or gate cards and put them onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle your library. So this is beneficial because if we need to get like a specific mana of sort, like with some of our mana intensive spells being like 2 red or maybe some being 2 green and such, we can use it to just dig for the specific gates that correspond with it. Also, fun to mention, and I don't even hate to say this, but I have to go back to it, Blood Sun again. Oh hey, we can actually search for our gateway plazas and don't have to worry about spending the mana on it, so yeah. It helps us both to ramp, but also can help us with fitzing, which that's our main purpose of the deck. It's help us to fitz for specific spells, so that we can have our early game board wipes or late game shenanigans. But also, it is as well for mana fitzing, and it's for ramp, because we need a ramp fast with this deck. Next up, Cleansing Nova. I put this in as a 1 of, though I've seen some lists play this as a 2 of. Now, it's a 5-cost sorcery with some very gorgeous Noah Bradley art that has choose 1. We either destroy all creatures or destroy all artifacts and enchantments. Now, I'll put this board wipe in here because of the versatility of it. The fact of it is that if we don't have any of our Gates Ablazes or Deafening Clarions, The fact that this can just be used to destroy some very, very problematic board states is very versatile. Plus, sometimes using the second clause, while seems unintuitive at first, especially since we have enchantments like Blood Sun and Guild Summon out, there are some times where you're just going to do that so you can get, like, your Gatebreaker Ram or even your other creatures out from exile thanks to stuff like Seal Away or Ixalan's Binding or Hieromancer's Grasp or, like the exile-based enchantments. And even if we need to use it to destroy a very problematic enchantment that our opponent has, that's fine for the cost. Because we have a way to restock our hand, in a sense. Now, the other card I have, this should really be a 2 of, but I'm doing it as a 1 of for a test of one other card in the deck, is Expansion Explosion. Expansion is 2 hybrid of Izzet colors to have for you to be at instant speed, to copy target instant or sorcery spell with converted mana cost 4 or less, and you may choose new targets for this copy. So, what Expansion does is, it is very beneficial for just the aspect of you being able to copy some very powerful spells that your opponent plays. Like, the best feeling in the world is when your opponents try to fodder ratio you and you use Expansion to copy their fodder ratio, taking out their combo pieces. That is just a very beneficial effect. Also, one ability that it can do is you can copy your own spells, which is very beneficial, like maybe you need a second Shimmer possibility to dig into your deck more, or maybe you need a second Gates of Blaze to make sure that board wipe works, etc, etc, etc. We can even use it to copy Circuitous Roots if we feel like we need to add additional meta. Now, honestly, most people will play this because the explosion side is just really good. The fact that it can be used both as a removal spell and a card draw engine is very powerful. The fact that it can deal X damage and draw X cards. In a ramp deck like us, that like our deck is essentially, with the Circuitous Roots, the Growth Spirals, we're going to get a lot of mana. So this can become a very high powerful card and even can be used in a finisher. Now, this is a 1 of at the moment because I'm testing a card that I'm going to skip to, which is Emergency Powers. Now, Emergency Powers is 5 white and a blue for an instant spell for each player shuffle their hand and graveyard into their graveyard, then draw 7 cards, we exile this card, but it has the addendum effect that if you cast this spell during your main phase, you may put a permanent card with converted mana cost 7 or less from your hand onto the battlefield. Now, honestly, we are avoiding the addendum as much as we can. Mostly, we're playing this card, honestly, just for the factor that it's a time twister that can be used at the end of the opponent's turn. So, we're going to use this at the end of the opponent's turn to help restock our hand, which could help us with our finisher. Which our finisher in this deck is Mirror March. Mirror March is whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, flip a coin until you lose a flip. For each flip you won, create a token that's a copy of that creature. Those tokens gain haste, exile them at the beginning of the next end step. Now, one thing you will notice, especially with cards in there, we have very high power cards, or cards that have some interesting enter the battlefield effects. We'll get to Archway Angel in a bit. But essentially, what Mirror March does is we can flip coins and try to get copies with haste onto the battlefield. So, for example, if our Gatebreaker Ram is late game, say a 14-14, as I mentioned, if Mirror March is on the battlefield, we can flip coins and hopefully actually get multiple copies of out with haste and hopefully use it as kind of our late game finisher. Now, honestly, while the deck Reflecting Gates is based solely on this card, completely honest with you, you don't really need this card for the deck. Honestly, there are more consistent sub-strategies like with Rhythm of the Wild, or even just another burn spell in there that might be a lot more effective to take than Mirror March. Mirror March is just my more janky kind of spice to the deck. But honestly, this is a card that is very high variance. If you want to take this out for a more competitive option, I will not blame you whatsoever. This is just more my, hey, let's have some funny shenanigans of getting like 12 copies of Gatebreaker Rams. Which did happen to me, and it's freaking hilarious. Also, another card that it's great to copy is Archway Angel. 5 and a white for a 3/4. Flying. When it enters the battlefield, you gain 2 life for each gate you control. Now, this one is kind of a no-brainer why this is really good for the deck. If we're going against like very aggressive or burn-based matchups, just having this out very early and being able to gain a significant portion of life since we're playing a lot of gates can help us save us in a twist. Plus, with Mirror March, it's just hilarious to get like 6 angels out, or maybe even 3 angels out, and just get a ridiculous amount of life. So, yeah. This is in here kind of as our protection against aggro-based, burn-based strategies. Next up, another last board wipe for the deck as a 1-of, Star of Extinction, 5 red and red. Destroy target land, Star of Extinction deals 20 damage to each creature and each planeswalker. This is our kind of our emergency switch board wipe. If we feel like there's a board state we just can't answer, like with planeswalkers and such, we will play this card, no sweat, and it will sometimes just be used to destroy a very problematic land, such as a Search for Azcanta flip, or even a Hitana's Climb flip. So, just the fact that it can be used for that, as well be a very efficient board wipe, is really, really good. Now, the last essential card of the deck for Gate decks is the Gate Colossus. It's an 8-mana 8/8 that will cost 1 less for each gate you control. And it can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less. Oh, and also has the ability that whenever a gate enters the battlefield under your control, you may put a Gate Colossus from your graveyard on the top of your library. Just this factor of this combo alone is kind of one of our secret bombs in the deck. Well, it's not really subtle. Most people know that this is a bomb, and they are playing it if you're playing a 4-color Gate deck. Just the fact that this is an 8/8 that can't be chump blocked, and can be recursive if you have gates to play, very powerful, and getting multiple copies of it from Mirror March is kind of hilarious. So, as you see for the deck tech, our main component of the deck is just to ramp, play big creatures, and hopefully use Mirror March to make copies of those creatures to either have very beneficial into the battlefield effects, or just be very big dumb dudes to be used as a finisher to swing in for lethal. So that is kind of like the main component of the deck. That's the main gimmick we're trying out. Oh wait, I almost forgot. There is one secret tech card we are running in this deck, which is Scapeshift. 2 green and a green for sacrifice any number of lands, search your library for up to that many land cards, put onto the battlefield tap, then shuffle your library. Now this one is kind of our 4th Securitas route in a sense, that we're more... This one is weird because it's not a ramp spell. We're more using this for more the second aspect of Securitas routes in there, which is for Fitzing. Like I mentioned before, we do have fast lands in the deck. We have stuff like Stomping Grounds, we have stuff like Plaza of Harmonies, Steam Vents, Breeding Pools, etc. What Scapeshift essentially does for our deck, if we feel like we get more benefit by having the gates out, we can actually use the Scapeshift to destroy the fast land matas, such as the Stomping Grounds and the Plaza of Harmonies and all the other pain lands that we have, to go into our deck, search for gates, and put the gates on the battlefield so we can get more powerful, like a more powerful Gatebreaker Ram, or a more powerful Gates Ablaze, or even for a cheaper cost Gate Colossus. Just that little factor alone makes Scapeshift a very interesting card for these type of decks. I don't know if it's going to be like a mainstay per se, but it's definitely one of those cards that the more I play with it, the more I'm like, it's a fine 1-of. Now, like I said before, that's kind of the primary deck. Let's get to the sideboard. Now, the sideboard, in general, is just a few cards. This one is more me taking some sideboards from other 4-color decks, / also just essentially tweaking it myself with some fun additions. The one that is kind of a no-brainer in here is Shivanfire. This is mostly just going to be used for early game removal if you are playing against aggro-based matchups, but also the fact that you can kick it and use it to destroy some very problematic mid-range creatures is very nice. Negates are in there to help negate against burn or control mirror matchups and such. Lava Coil's in there for against the Drake decks to be able to destroy Drakes and such, which is very powerful. Some additional Knight of the Autumns if we feel like we need a benefit from the versatility of the card. Rhythm of the Wild against control matchups, and the fact that these can be used as more like the more competitive Mirror March in a sense that the factor that we're probably going to use them as a finisher in general to essentially make our creatures have haste and then swing in for lethal. But this is mostly in the sideboard against control matchups. Our own Itzlan's Binding to just hopefully remove some very problematic cards that we don't want opponents to play. Motani's in there kind of as a way to replace Mirror March, or just essentially A card that is very, very powerful because we're a ramp deck, we're going to play a lot of lands. So using this as another finisher to hopefully, if with Rhythm of the Wild on the battlefield, give it haste and swing for lethal. It's also could be just a big creature with reach and trample, which could also be used for very defensive. Now, what I'm going to show here next is done with the sideboard is now what I call the maybe board. I feel like I should put this into my future deck tech videos and such, and I'm going to try it. What the maybe board in this case is going to be cards that I think are cards you want to try out for the deck. Like I said, my decks are more janky variation of decks and such that are popular in the meta. So these maybe boards are going to include cards that I have seen either in those decks or cards that I think would be interesting additions, to say at the least. First up is Entrancing Melody, along with Mass Manipulation. These are just our standard Ets blue and a blue or Ets blue 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 to essentially gain control of Ets target creatures or target creature or planeswalkers. These are very beneficial in this type of deck since they are ramp decks. We're going to get a lot of mana. We also have ways to fit, so we don't have to worry about the multi-blue cost. So the fact that you can steal either very powerful creatures or planeswalkers late game is very, very beneficial. Next up, Search for Azcanta. Now, I put it out of the main list for this one is because the fact that we have Blood Sun as our main combo piece, so it kind of is a nombo with Search for Azcanta's flips and such. But the fact that this can be used as a repetitive impulse, essentially, with its flip, is really good. Plus the fact that we can look at the top of our library and just essentially see if there's cards that we want to not draw into and then draw into other cards. Very powerful. You see this in control decks constantly for good reasons. Next up, I feel like I put this card in here, though I do feel like there are two cards that are associated with this, which is Wall of Lost Thoughts as the card I featured in here, which is a wall that's a 0/4 that's with Defender, and when it enters the battlefield, target player puts the top 4 cards of the library into their graveyard. First of all, with Mirror March, it's kind of hilarious if you can get multiple copies of those out and nail your opponent for a lot of cards. Now, the other card that's also kind of a nice slot into the deck is Psychic Corrosion. I have seen actually some gate decks, and I wasn't able to put this in right when the deck tech video since I was doing some testing. There's some people that are running the Gates deck with Psychic Corrosion in there since they have the really, really good draw engine with Guild Summit and Gates. Just using the draw engine itself and Psychic Corrosion, which for people who don't know, it's 2 and a blue for an enchantment that whenever you draw a card, you mill the top 2 cards of your opponent's library. The fact that we have such a good draw engine and with Wall Lost Thoughts, I think you can make a silly mill 4-color gate deck and just have some fun shenanigans with that. Next up. Now, honestly, this is a card that I would really, really, really want to put in the deck, except for 2 reasons that are preventing me from doing it. One, this card is ridiculously expensive now. This card, thanks to the factor of the competitive tournaments that happened last weekend as of this recording, is a little bit over $30. And I don't really want to make a gimmick/jank deck where I'm like, hey, you can play this deck as long as you pay for a playset about a box of the new set just to pick up these cards. Yeah. Now, yeah, the price alone is just $30 each. Just wait. Just wait a few weeks. The price will go down a teeny little bit. I would say picking these up at around 15 to 20 is fine. But for 30, it's a little risky. But Hydrocrasis, getting to the card itself now, other than the little price rant there, adds green and a blue for a Jellyfish Hydra Beast as a 0/0, that when you have a cast a spell, you gain Et's half-life and draw half Et's cards, round down each time. It has flying and trample, and it enters the battlefield with Et's counters on it. This is a really good card for a 4-color gate deck for a few reasons. One, we're going to ramp a lot, so we could put a lot of Ets into this and make it into, even if this gets countered, into, at worst, just a really good card draw/life gain engine. But at the best, we can use this to make a very big, intimidating late to even mid-range base creature out of it, and still get card draw and life gain out of it. Now, the second reason, and this is more a personal reason why I took it out of the deck besides the budget purposing, is because with the main jank being Mirror March, it doesn't really synergize well with that. Since the factor that Hydrocrasis ability is an ability that happens when it's cast, not when it enters the battlefield. We don't get card draw or life gain out of the copies, and the copies will fizzle since the copies are going to be considered 0/0s rather than the whatever X is how many counters we put on it. So it's kind of a nombo with that. Also, another card that I've seen in some decks, but I kind of debate about it, is District Guide. 2 and a green for a 2/2. When it enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a basic land or gate card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. It's a good card, don't get me wrong, and I see how some gate decks like to play it for color fixing, but I feel like if you... This is more like a budget option, I feel, if you don't have, like, the Gateway Plazas and Plaza of Harmonies for the fixing. I don't think this is one you want to put into your deck just for the sake of additional fixing. And also, it kind of has a teeny little number with Mirror Merch that if we get multiple copies... Well, wait, it is a May, isn't it? Oh, it's May, so we could just get multiple copies. Actually, maybe I should put that main board, the more that I think about it. I don't know. Our deck is already very slotted as it is, but if you feel like you need more additional fixing, District Guide is a good choice. Just with the inter-battlefield effect in general. And the one card that I think would work for the deck is Nexus of Fate, 5 blue and a blue, take an extra turn after this one. If Nexus of Fate would be put into a graveyard for any rare, reveal Nexus of Fate and reshuffle it into your owner's library instead. This is kind of a no-brainer. We get extra turns, which hopefully helps us with the extra turns to get into our combo pieces, which hopefully help us get into our finisher. This is still kind of a maybe in the deck, because I do feel like there's just going to be moments where... At least I feel like this might be just a dead card sometimes. Sure, getting an extra turn is nice, but there are some times where... At least with this deck's concern, since we're not running the search for Azcanta, we can't be consistent with our Nexus of Fate, so there's just going to be times where it's just going to be play a land and go. So, yeah. Overall, though, that is the deck of Reflecting Gates. I hope you enjoyed this video. Up next will be the gameplay video of this deck. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. Also, if you want to give a shot to look at Aether Hub. This is a great site if you want to work on your own kind of like janky brews and such. They have really good ways to help dictate your mana curve, breaking it down, checking the rarity count so you know kind of like what wild cards you need. Also kind of like looking at your mana calculator, which is an alright mana calculator. I don't use it a majority of the time, but it's a decent mana calculator if you just need it for a mana breakdown, essentially. And overall... that is the deck. I hope you guys enjoyed the deck tech. This is Jordan Leroy Hansen, also known as LedDev, signing out.